Okay, so we're here with Cyminology, and As Nay is the new disc. It's on ECM Records, and I wanted to ask you about where you folks feel your group rest in the world of jazz. Reading the bio, it says contemporary jazz, mentions even bossa nova, I guess, minimalism, art songs, modern composition, but to me there's a lot of improv that's very orchestrated. And wanted to get your thoughts on where you sort of fit in the jazz world, where you fit on ECM, and where your group could be pigeonholed, if anywhere. So I'll let you elaborate.
Do you want to do that? Or?
Well, I can start trying to answer these questions. Yeah, I think the things you pointed out is certainly something that's stuff that we worked on, and we try to be unique with that idea of having improvisation that's undistinguishable from composition and arrangement, and make these things work together in a way so our listeners would as you described it, like sort of like not really sure, is it now improvisation, or is that still the composition? And that's like from our perspective a perfect way to approach improvisation anyways, because it shouldn't be away from the composition. It should be a part of it, and it should be a comprehensive and maybe that's not the right word, but yeah, just a whole thing that's convincing. And I think with ECM that just the whole atmosphere that Manfred Eicher, the mastermind, and the whole label, including even artwork and stuff, the whole atmosphere that gets created really supports that idea of having jazz elements, meaning improvisation. That's essentially what jazz means to me. Composition, almost like sometimes in a classical, sometimes there are some ethnic elements, maybe. The Farsi language, like having all these things like put together in a room or in a setting, in an atmosphere that just hopefully opens people's minds to a new thing. And that's why we find it usually very hard to describe what this actually is, because obviously we want to push the border and do something new.
Gotcha. And as far as the older CDs, which I don't know, how is it like you're moving along, or are you sort of just getting focused on the territory that you're in?
That's a good question. I mean, maybe it's both. We're really focusing on what we have been doing all the time, and we're trying to work out the details more. And of course, there's a growing. We're getting really close together. We've been touring a lot, doing a lot of concerts all over the world. So we got close as friends, as people, and of course that changes the music too. It gives it an intimacy that I think it wouldn't have if we would just have started yesterday with this group. So there's always a growing, getting together, focusing on what you're doing, and trying to be creative and finding new ways and new lines and seeing what can happen more.
You all play a lot of different instruments besides your main instrument that you do in the band. Do any of you do composition for the project on other instruments, or do you pick up the double bass, or are you humming melodies, or like I know you studied percussion, so how does that process work? The bio sort of elaborates that some of you will bring in more structured pieces and others will bring in bits, but how does that really pan out?
Well, I think it's actually like on this record, I could certainly like point out like this is a piece Simin or I brought in, and it stayed pretty much the same throughout the whole process. And then there's this other piece that just started completely differently. Like for instance, I think it's actually the last piece. So we had like 5 different versions, including highly arranged, complicated ideas written down, and the final version was just improvised actually pretty much it came up in the studio right there on the spot. So the whole thing really develops partially at home in Cymin's head, in my head, and partially it's written down, partially it's just the melody, partially sometimes it's just the lyrics. Sometimes even we just present a CD that we just listen to a lot, and can we do like sort of find something in that atmosphere with this, and then Ketan comes into place and like tries to find ways using his percussion vocabulary to put it on bring it to a different level and a different atmosphere. And it's certainly very we use many different techniques composition wise and how to develop the music.
And even on the instrument, sometimes I compose tunes on the piano. I don't sing at all. Sometimes I just start singing and listening back. I mean, I record myself a lot and then listening back and saying, well, that's a nice part, and maybe I should change it just a little bit in this direction or that direction. Sometimes I try to imagine instruments, like imagining Ralph on the bass, playing special lines. So that's really what I want. I want to try to see the people who are playing it, and then trying to, well, that's something that would fit well with him, or his body language. So that's all. Those things are in my head, and they come out sometimes even on the drums. I don't have written for a couple of years on drums, but when I was studying I had more instruments, so then I just went up to the drums and played something, or on the marimba. I know there's one tune on our first CD that came up on the marimba.
Okay.
So it's always where you are, what you do, what you listen to, and we're all influenced from different music styles, so we listen to different music styles, and sometimes there are CDs that impress us and we say, oh wow, that's a neat idea actually.
Let's talk about that. That was one of my later questions, but that's good that we're touching on there. Is what sort of things outside of the jazz world do you guys listen to for enjoyment, or maybe play in your spare time, or fiddle around with? Like, I guess there'd been a grunge duo between yourself and Ralph. So, are you still curious what maybe Pearl Jam is doing, or if a Nirvana unreleased tune comes out, do you want to hear these kinds of things, or?
Certainly.
To talk a little bit about some of the outside stuff you guys enjoy and where it may influence the music or affect it.
Yeah, actually, last week I had a little revival from Pearl Jam, because they brought this first album. Re-released it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did the whole grunge thing. I went through it, but there are many more influences. Not only from rock music for me. It's from classical music, like composers like Mahler or Beethoven, and yeah, I'm not aware of the fact that I combine these influences in the music. I'm trying to do that. Yeah.
I think we all of course we are listening to different. I think there's no border, like we only listen to that or this. So like he's listening a lot to rock. I was listening a lot to hip hop and R&B stuff, and but every one of us, of course, listen to classical and contemporary classical maybe. And Bene is definitely very jazz based. He has a big repertoire of jazz he was listening to, and so we all bring that together. And of course, like he says, it's not like that we are aware of
a conscious thing.
Yeah, like okay, now we take this is the classical element and this is the hip hop element, and now we bring it together. It's just, of course, you are influenced, and that's what you bring in.
And that's what I believe actually, that everything that you do, that you listen to, it somehow goes into the music. It's not really that you think about it, or that you sit down and say, oh, okay, that's from here, that's from there. It's more you just go for it, and then it's in there, and other people point that out suddenly, saying, oh yeah, I know that from this group, and that's a classical group, or so that's interesting for us to hear from others what they find in our music.
And that makes it unique, our style of music, I think, because we bring all our influences in the band and can create some new stuff.